Today we're going to be making the lounge pants, and here are the pieces that you'll need to cut in order to make them. First of all, you'll need 2 front pieces, and they're pretty long. They'll look like this, and you need to cut 2 as mirror images. So here I have my 2 pieces that are stuck together at the moment. If you're going to be doing the drawstrings, you'll need to mark the drawstring opening here. And if you're going to be doing pockets, you'll need to cut out or mark the notches for the pockets. There are several inseam markings on the pattern piece, so you can choose your inseams. Just make sure that whatever inseam you choose, you cut the front and the back with the same inseam. And also the pocket markings match with the 2 different rises. You have a high rise and a mid rise, so make sure you pay attention to those as well. This is the high rise that I have cut. And on the back pieces, you will need to cut 2 of those as mirror images as well, and you can see I have 2 cut. You will also need to mark or cut the notches for the pockets if you're making the pockets, and make sure that you get that inseam to match the inseam on your front piece. If you're making the pockets, you'll need to cut 4 of the pockets, and I have cut 2 at a time. So here you can see I have 2 and 2. And the pockets have 2 notches on each for you to mark or cut out as well. And finally, if you are going to be doing the knit ankle cuffs, you'll want to cut out 2 of the ankle cuffs. I only cut out 1 here, but make sure you cut out 2, 1 for each ankle. You'll want it out of some stretchy material or a rib knit such as this. I would like to point out that before starting, I went ahead and serged all of the side seams, inseams, and crotch seams on my pants. You can skip the initial stitching that I did and just finish all the seams as you sew. But I find that I like doing it with my serger before I get started. That way, after I sew each seam, I'm done and I don't have to switch machines or remember to finish seams in between. You can skip the very top because that will be double folded with your elastic waistband. And you can also skip the very bottom because that will either be double folded as a hem or you'll use your serger to attach the ankle band. Let's get started pinning those pockets. You should have notches marked on both pieces. You can mark them with a pin, you can notch them outward, or you can notch them inward as I've done there, with right sides facing each other, and just pin them right along that side seam. These are the back pieces. We'll go grab the front pieces and do the same with those as well. We're going to take all of these pieces, all 4 pieces, and stitch with a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once we have stitched the pocket pieces to the side seams, it will look like this. And you can see my stitch line right here, 3/8 of an inch away from the edge. At this point, if you haven't already, you're going to want to finish this edge right here where the pocket is attached to the side seam. You can finish the whole way down if you'd like, or at least just finish this section right here. So now you need to open up the pocket away from the pant and press the pocket away from the pant. And you also want to turn it to the wrong side and press the seam toward the pocket and away from the pant. Once you've done that with all 4 pieces, you're going to take 1 back piece and 1 front piece. And you can tell and make sure that you have 2 different pieces by this center crotch seam. They should be different. So make sure you have 2 pieces that are different. And we are going to align them all along that side seam, and we're going to align the pocket as well. If you're not doing the pocket, you will just align the side seam all the way down. So once we have the side seam, the pocket, and all the rest of the side seam pinned, we will repeat with the other pair. And then once they're both done, take it over to the sewing machine. Now we're going to stitch the side seams with the pocket attached. And what we'll do is start at the very top of the pant and come down. And we're going to come down 1 inch below where the pocket starts. So our stitch line is going to come right along here, and I've marked 1 inch below the top of that pocket. So I'm going to stitch all the way down to this blue line. Then I'm going to come back at 3/8 inch seam allowance and stitch all the way around the pocket. And then when I finish the pocket, I'm going to come back up 2 inches above the bottom of the pocket, and I've marked that with a little disappearing ink there. And then I'm going to come straight back down and continue all the way down the side seam. Now the reason that we go into the pocket a bit is for some added strength and stability on the pocket. We put our hands in and out of that pocket, so this is going to strengthen that area so that it doesn't rip open. I'm just stitching along the original stitch line, and now I'm just going to back stitch my way back to where I want to be. Now when we get back to the stitch line from when we attached the pocket, we'll stop right at the stitch line, stop with my needle right when it lands right on that stitch line. Okay, and then I'll turn and head back up the pocket. Okay, I'm stopping with my needle down, by the way, which helps so that I can turn and make sure that I keep my needle in the same spot. And now I've turned so that I can head back down. Now the entire side seam is stitched. The pocket is stitched. If you didn't already finish the edges like I did, go ahead and use your serger or a zigzag stitch and follow along all the edges where you just stitched. And then you can either iron it toward the back of the pant, or if you already finished it, you have the option of opening the seam and ironing it open for a more flat finish on the inside, which is what I will be doing. Then stitch the other leg in the exact same manner. Once the side seam is stitched up and the pocket is stitched and everything is ironed, it will look something like this. At this point, you will fold it so that the inseam edges are aligned. Now we'll stitch this inseam in place. seam. If you iron it open, it will look like this, or you could also iron it toward the back side if you finished the edges post-construction. At this point, you should have both of your legs stitched and ironed. Take one of them and turn it so that right sides are out. And then we're gonna slip this right side out leg into the wrong side out leg. So we'll open this one up here and we'll slip it in so that the crotch seam is face up, just like the crotch seam is face up on this piece. We're going to line up the center seam and the entire crotch seam of the two legs together. Stitch this long U-shaped crotch seam using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Here's how the crotch seam looks at this point. It's a long U shape. If you haven't already, finish these edges with a zigzag stitch or your serger. Now come back to your table and pull the leg out that was tucked in. Your pants will now be wrong side out. Find the markings on the front of the pant for the grommets or buttonholes. And if you plan on using a drawstring on your pant, you'll want to iron on some interfacing scraps. So I just actually pulled these out of my sewing room trash can from when I made my adventure bag, cut out some little squares and iron them right over those markings. And then you'll either attach grommets or stitch buttonholes right on that spot. I will probably stitch a buttonhole because these are pajama pants. I feel like I'd rather have a soft buttonhole rather than a metal grommet. So I will go do that now. I have now ironed the interfacing scraps onto my pants, and I'm going to stitch some buttonholes right here on these spots. I don't normally show buttonholes on videos because machines are all different. Make sure to read your machine's instructions regarding how to use your buttonhole foot. The process may be different, but I just thought it might be helpful for some people to see how I stitch a buttonhole. I used just a random little small button from an old button stash that I have, my button jar, and the hole needs to be small because I'm just putting a drawstring through it, so I just chose a small button. I'm going to switch out my feet. And I'm going to pull down the lever for the buttonhole foot. This lever always needs to be down in order to make sure the foot stops where it needs to stop. All right. I'm going to choose one of the buttonhole options on my machine. It's a Janome I purchased secondhand. It does have the buttonhole feature on it, which is nice. I am going to line up my needle with the bottom edge of one of my buttonhole markings here. Let's get it under the foot. And I'm going to look through the little opening on my buttonhole foot and line up that straight edge right underneath my needle. Put the foot down. Hold my threads and just begin stitching. And I'm just going to hold my foot down and just allow the machine to move the fabric where it wants to move it. I'm not pulling with my fingers, I'm just helping to guide it a little bit. Okay, it tells me when it's done. And then I like to pull a long tail at the end of my buttonholes. So this is what it looks like from the right side where I was stitching. And this is how it looks from the wrong side, which is actually the right side of my fabric. The reason I like to pull the long tails is because then I will get a hand needle and I will thread this through to the back side, and then I'll tie little knots on these threads before snipping them off. So I'll thread both of these through to the back side and then tie little knots. Once I have tied these threads to the back, I'll open up the buttonhole, and I like to use my seam ripper and I went in to the center of the buttonhole and I made sure to come out just a little bit of ways so that I can have a very controlled little snip with my seam ripper. And once I've opened up a small hole with my seam ripper, then I'll use my tiny scissors and snip the rest of the way. That way it's a controlled opening and I don't risk seam ripping accidentally through the end of my buttonhole. So once that is done, I can just come in here and look for any extra threads, snip them off, and then I'm done. I could also use some of this fray check to just dab along the edges there, and that just helps keep it from fraying. But I often don't do that at all. And there's your buttonhole. Now you will take your elastic and fold it so that it's in the shape of a loop. And then you'll overlap the two ends and stitch them together with a square and an X in the middle. It will look something like this. Now take that elastic and mark the quarter points on it. You'll also mark the quarter points along the top of the pants. The front and center back are already marked with a seam. So we'll just line up the front and center back in order to find the side quarter points. Once those are marked, we will pin the elastic to the quarter points on the top of the pants, and we'll pin it onto the wrong side. You're going to be stretching the elastic quite a bit to attach it to these pants. If it makes you feel more comfortable, you can go ahead and stretch it now and add an additional pin or clip in between each quarter point. Now we'll take this over to the machine and we'll be attaching it using a zigzag stitch or a serger, and that is why we were able to leave this edge raw and not finish it beforehand. We'll now stitch the elastic to the top of the pants. We will be using a zigzag stitch for this step. You can also use your serger if you prefer. The elastic is attached all the way around and it will look like this on the front side. You can clip off any stray threads at this point that maybe you forgot to clip off earlier. and it will look like this from the wrong side. Okay. At this point, you want to pin your pockets down so that they are laying flat against the front of the pant. We want to keep them straight up at the top, and then toward the bottom we want to keep them out of the way. Okay, that should do it. At this point, we will fold the elastic down one time toward the wrong side, and make sure you fold right at the edge of the elastic right there, and pin in place. And you'll do this in the 4 spots that you pinned before. And then if you'd like, for better ease while sewing, you can pin in between all of those spots, just like we did for the initial elastic install. And once everything is pinned to your liking, you will stitch from the wrong side and use a zigzag stitch once again to attach this edge of the elastic to the pant. As you're stitching, you want to make sure there's no excess fabric sticking up above the elastic over here. So make sure that you keep that taut and the elastic right up against this edge here. So here's what the top of our pant looks like now. Cozy. At this point, you can use a safety pin or whatever device that you like for moving a drawstring through a waistband, and get that drawstring in through there. And then we'll move on to the ankle cuffs. We have 3 different ankle finishes for you to choose from. The first would be to hem the pants. If you're going to do that, you will turn the pant 1/4 inch to the wrong side and iron, and then turn it again a second time and stitch it down. I won't be showing that method. I'll be showing the elastic and the jogger style method. So if you are going to do the stretch fabric, the knit cuffs, you'll take your knit cuff piece and you're going to fold it in half with the short sides aligned. Clip it and stitch along this end. If you're doing the elasticized ankle, you're going to take your piece of elastic and you are going to fold it into a loop, and you're going to stitch the ends closed. This method, by the way, is the exact same steps that you have just done for the waistband. So I'm going to take both of these over and I'll stitch them, and I'll be right back. Okay, and we're back. I have stitched the end of this cuff. I used a lightning bolt stretch stitch. I'm now going to take it and fold it in half so that wrong sides are together. and mark the halfway point on the other side of the band. For the elastic, I have stitched the ends together using the box and the X mark. Mark the halfway point. For this elastic, I will pin and stitch it to the wrong side of the ankle. And just like before, I can stretch it in order to find extra points in the middle. Okay. For the knit cuff, I will turn it so that the raw edges meet with the raw edges of the pant, and I'll pin it to the right side of the pant. I'll line up the seam of the pants with the seam of the cuff, and the other pant seam I will line up with my pin that I marked. I'll give some extra markings to make it easier to stitch. Stretch everything and then pinch it with my fingers. Okay, now I will stitch both of these using a zigzag stitch or serger to attach them. I'll attach both ankle finishing styles with a zigzag stitch. So I'll start with the knit cuff. Stretch the cuff to meet the pants. Flip it over, and here's how it looks from the right side. Okay. If you're doing the elasticized ankle, we'll stitch right along the edge there with a stretch stitch. And I will be using the zigzag stitch again. Attached. Now we'll fold it one time toward the wrong side. All right, and just like on the waistband, we will be stitching along this edge of the elastic. What your elasticized cuff will look like. And that's it. That is the lounge pant. Great holiday gift for family members. They'll especially love the comfort, the pockets for phones, which everybody needs these days. And you can choose the cuff that suits everyone's needs. Enjoy!